Okay, so in the world of private equity, the ground has completely shifted. The old way of making money, it's broken. But a new playbook is emerging for this tougher post-ZIRP world. It's a framework developed by transformation expert Daniel Bailey. And, well, it's a total game changer. Let's get into it. This quote right here, it just says it all. For the last 20 years or so, private equity was a game you won on spreadsheets, right? Financial engineering, tons of cheap debt. That was the whole formula. But that era is done. Now, the real value, the real alpha, is created right on the shop floor. It's all about operational excellence. So before we can really dig into the new playbook, we have to understand exactly what killed the old one. Let's take a look at why these strategies that literally made billions are all of a sudden falling apart. For 2 solid decades, the industry was basically running on what we call the ZIRP era playbook. ZIRP, that's zero interest rate policy. It meant money was incredibly, incredibly cheap. So firms would use massive amounts of leverage, borrowed cash, to just supercharge their returns. Financial engineering wasn't just a strategy, it was the only strategy that really mattered. But now, well, that era is over. With interest rates soaring, the old playbook isn't just a little outdated. It's become a huge liability. You simply cannot borrow your way to success anymore. The focus has been forced to shift away from financial tricks and toward genuine, hands-on operational skill. And listen, this isn't just some abstract theory. You can actually feel the anxiety in the market. As one PE managing director put it, leaders feel like they're sailing in completely uncharted waters. They see this giant storm on the horizon, AI, but they have absolutely no idea how to actually harness its power. So how did the industry respond to all this? Well, the first attempts to adapt have been, to put it bluntly, a disaster. They've created this massive and very, very expensive blind spot. $200 billion. Let that sink in. Based on a deep analysis of transformation projects, that's the estimated value that private equity firms are leaving on the table right now. And why? Failed AI projects and just clumsy tech deployment. It's a truly staggering amount of waste. So how does a $200 billion failure actually happen? Well, it looks like this. A devastating 7 out of every 10 transformation projects fail. Firms are spending an absolute fortune on AI tools, but they're just not getting the results. It's proof that just buying the technology is nowhere near the answer. And the core reason for all these failures is a concept the framework calls cognitive debt. This is what happens when teams get so reliant on AI that they basically stop thinking for themselves. They just trust the black box output without questioning it. And that leads to these massive, really expensive errors. And here is a perfect real-world example of what that looks like. Apollo had a black box AI system that completely missed some critical regulatory details. The kind of nuance a human expert would have caught in a second. The result? A $50 million write-down. That is the real cost of just plugging in technology without that human synthesis. Okay, so if the old playbook is dead and just blindly buying AI is failing, what actually works? This brings us to the big solution: the execution orchestra. This framework orchestrates 3 key elements, and they have to work together. First, you have AI, and that's the precision score. Think of it like the detailed sheet music. Second, you have new ways of working, which is the adaptive rhythm. That's how the team stays in sync. And third, and this is crucial, you have human talent as the strategic conductor, the one interpreting the music and leading the performance. It's that conductor who prevents the costly cognitive debt we just talked about. And the results of all this? You get a system that turns complexity into a real competitive advantage. And this isn't just about avoiding failure, it's about creating huge value. The research shows that firms using this model are on track to deliver 5 to 10% improvements in IRR by 2027. And here is maybe the single most critical mind shift in this entire framework. The goal isn't just to optimize your old processes, it's to make them obsolete. It's about completely redesigning how you create value from the ground up to build an advantage that actually lasts. So what does this actually look like in the real world? Let's get to the proof. Because the results of mastering this new model, they're not just theoretical. They're quantified. and they are powerful. 55%. That is the kind of EBITDA lift firms like Thoma Bravo are seeing when they fuse AI with agile operations. We're not talking about a small tweak here. This is a total performance transformation. 40%. That's how much KKR managed to compress cycle times in its supply chains. That is pure operational speed. It's a competitive edge that financial engineering on its own could never, ever achieve. So what does all that speed and all that efficiency add up to? Well, it adds up to a 2 to 3 times higher rate of return for the top performing funds. This is what separates the leaders from the laggards now. It creates a massive, almost insurmountable advantage. The execution orchestra delivers these kinds of breakthroughs again and again. You see it in Blackstone's margin recovery, you see it in KKR's cycle compression, and Thoma Bravo's huge EBITDA lifts. These aren't just lucky one-off wins. They're the direct result of a systematic, orchestrated approach. And the proof just keeps piling up. We're talking 94% on-time delivery, M&A integrations cut from 90 days down to 30, Blackstone saving 15,000 analyst hours a year, Carlyle boosting returns with its AI Whispers program. I mean, the results, they really do speak for themselves. You know, this all leads to a really powerful question that the framework poses to leaders, and I'll just leave it with you to think about. For your next board meeting, are you simply competing within the market as it exists today, or are you using this new playbook to actually architect a market where you hold all the advantages? Ultimately, it all comes down to this. The era of easy money is gone for good. The future of private equity belongs to the operators, the conductors, the orchestrators. The choice is pretty stark. Master the orchestra or lose the stage.